Okay, there it goes. All right, and we're live. So let's start with an easy one. General questions. Are there more opportunities for temporary positions or contracts in the pandemic?
Maybe I can best speak to this since still kind of coming from the agency side. I would say yes, that in terms of what I'm seeing most frequently are projects or contracts or contract to potential hire. I'm sure as you're all very aware, people are pretty hesitant about hiring right now. So we're seeing just a larger influx of contract roles versus, bringing somebody on long term without really knowing, what's going to be maybe the future of that company at this point. So especially a lot of web development agencies, they're really looking like project to project right now.
Great. Anyone have anything to add to that?
I would simply add that the contingency labor market or contract market is generally a leading indicator of that. So when you see that their roles are maybe decreasing from having a lot in the contract side and moving more towards contract to hire or direct hire, that's a sign of the economy coming back. So when you see a heavy dose of contract, then that's typically what you would see in a market that's down.
Okay. I never knew. Thank you.
And that's from an economist.
That's right.
And I think Tim and I probably both saw the last recession hit the job market in the same way. It just had improved so drastically up until, obviously, probably the last 2 to 3 years. So it's all cyclical, right? Like it'll come back, it'll improve. But yeah, we're just in one of those times. But it did get better last time, so I'm cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic, exactly. So when people are looking for these positions that are pretty hard to get, is LinkedIn still the best tool to search and apply? Is there somewhere else people should be looking? What's the scoop?
I would say whatever means you have available to research a company or an industry, take advantage of it, whether it's doing Google search or taking advantage of free resources that your local library might have. But definitely LinkedIn is a good place to start, because what you can do is find out if you're connected to anybody at a given company that you might be interested in. But I wouldn't just settle in on LinkedIn. Definitely you want to go to the company's website, especially if you have a targeted list of companies that you're interested in. And the other thing regarding job postings too, I know this is true with New Relic. Oftentimes someone may message me and say, hey, I tried to apply for, or I applied for, and I'll tell them that, well, if you apply through LinkedIn, there's going to be a bit of a lag. So it's better to go through our website or have somebody send you an invitation to apply to a position rather than just going off of what you see on LinkedIn. So you always want to double check the company's career site, I think.
Yeah, I will say in my experience, I've only worked in the industry. I think I'm on my third year in my career, but it was interesting to find that people were saying, we asked what some applicants thought of our website, and it seemed that people hadn't really looked into it much. So it definitely does show more of an interest, right? That people would have researched your website and done their due diligence before reaching out. Is there anything in particular on a website of a company that would be most important to you that they would have looked into? Thinking maybe culture or services. Are there any particular questions people can ask about the website that would show they really cared?
For me, I think it's what do you do question. If you ask them, what was it that it really intrigued them about the company? and it depends on the company. You know, if you're a business that
Mm,
doesn't have a really great website, then it's going to be difficult for somebody to really gather information. But if there's a
mhm,
business out there that has case studies that really goes into depth about the products that they have, if there's a blog, anything that talks
mm.
about their culture, their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, um, you know, those types of businesses, you should be able to gather enough information. And even if you're going deep to talk about their industry and what they're doing, that's really going to be impressive to the person that's interviewing them.
Great. Anyone, any of the other panelists here have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's really, really great advice. I just would like to echo Tim in saying research the companies that you're applying for. Um, I often get a lot of applications on LinkedIn, and they're you don't know how to approach a recruiter or a staffing agency. So yeah, just kind of learn about the company. Like I think even before you apply, read their website through. It helps kind of contextually, no matter what.
And if I can chime in there, almost everybody talks about the company culture. It's a really easy thing to do because most companies put it everywhere. You'll stand out if you can tell the company about their product line and about their competitors as well, which are very easy things to Google.
Mm. Yeah, the competitors. That's one I hadn't really thought of myself. But that would definitely show that they were going the extra mile. Um, so going back to kind of the general thoughts, are my best chances or someone's best chances in another city now that we're all remote? Is it better to look outside of Portland, or are you still mostly placing for in the area?
I'm currently still placing like exclusively in Portland. Um, well, but some of the folks that we've been able to place lately have been in, California or Texas or Washington. I think you're free to look up and down the West Coast. I think because positions are mostly remote, and especially if it's a short-term engagement, I mean, then you won't have to worry about relocating in the future or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I think it's certainly worth applying outside of the Portland area if you're located here. I think you can apply anywhere from like LA up through Seattle, um, or just like any West Coast time zone. I think
Mm-hmm.
at least some of our clients have been hesitant about people that are, on the East Coast because that's a pretty significant
Mm-hmm.
time difference. Like,
3 hours, I think.
yeah, 3 hours is just like, that's kind of the, people find that to be more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as an applicant, I think just apply everywhere. Jobs are sparse. So yeah,
Yeah.
even on the West Coast.
Yeah, I would agree with what Amanda said. And I would even say that you would probably want to take a look at yourself and your situation and ask yourself if you're comfortable working for a company that's based on the East Coast or the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of companies are open to having people work remotely. And if you're somewhat comfortable with it and you end up applying for a position that you're really excited about, and then you come to find out that it would require you to move to that location when COVID is over, then
Mm-hmm.
that's going to put yourself in a tough position. But if you're comfortable working remotely 80%, 100% of the time, then I'd say, yeah, by all means, go ahead and apply to those roles, because I tend to say the smart companies are going to continue with this past COVID. Some are not, but I think a lot of companies really understand that, hey, we can be just as productive working fully remote. But then there are going to be those that will have kind of a hybrid approach where some are really meant to be on-site positions versus those that they're saying, yeah, no, we can have somebody work in Austin. We don't care if they're
Mm-hmm.
two time zones away from us.
So that's usually a decision that the company makes in advance before they really start interviewing, is whether they're open to folks from outside of the area, time zone wise.
Yeah, recruiters are always going to push for it,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately it's the hiring manager's decision, and at least at New Relic, their desire to figure out, okay, is this going to be a challenge for the whole team morale and how we flow as a team, Or is this something that we're going to be able to embrace because maybe we're already somewhat distributed right now?
Mhm. So Gigi, are there any thoughts that maybe interacting with folks from other states, anything that you've encountered in your work that would help folks that are interviewing out of state or maybe in different time zones, any strategies that they can use to present well?
Well, it's interesting about being from out of state because I live in Oregon now, but I'm originally from the East Coast. So I had to learn to talk slower
Okay.
when I came here. And when
Oh,
I go back to the
interesting.
East Coast, I need to talk faster. And
Mm.
when I first taught in Oregon, I had to warn students that I would interrupt them, as the teacher, but not to take it personally, because in New York, everyone interrupts everyone. It's just sort of the way you talk. So I think you might want to think about cultural differences of different places in the country before. But just a couple of tips, 3 things that I recommend people do when they do online interviews that I have to say, I attended a bunch of different summits this week with some high level leaders. And these leaders aren't doing these things. And some of them are, but many people aren't. And one of them is just to make sure that your camera is raised high enough so that when you're doing the online interview, you're looking right across, not down at your, interviewer, or not up at your
The
interviewer.
toe is what we call it at our job.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And
You're sunk in too far. Uh-oh, looks like we lost Gigi a little bit.
Oh, no.
Do we have you back? I think you're back now.
I hope so. So
Okay, I'll flag you again. Oh, I spoke too soon.
can you hear me now?
Let's try one more time slowly, and then we might maybe just give
Okay.
your audio time to catch up.
My internet time to catch up. Yeah. Yeah. So the
Well,
second
that was a
thing I
great
was gonna
tip
say is
already.
just make sure that you're lighting your face from,
Mhm.
And then the third thing is just to use any kind of microphone at all. Even your earbuds make a better microphone than the computer microphone. So
I'm
gonna see if
crossing, I think, 2 off of not doing it right because I have a source of light here, and I do have not a great positioning. So these are 2 things that are actionable right away. That's awesome. Thank you, Gigi. All right. So
Yeah.
what skills at a high level are most in demand right now? Any trends that you're seeing lately?
I personally think it's been just so all over the board this year. I think at least on the agency side, what I have been seeing is a lot of site rebuilds. So WordPress, any sort of CMS type roles have been pretty prevalent. However, I feel like it's been a slowdown of like conscious back-end engineering hires, or even full stack engineers. It seems to have been a lot of front end, a lot of e-commerce, some e-learning design, basically any businesses that we are using a lot for like delivery or takeout or ordering things. That's been where the most work has been, at least again from what I'm seeing.
For us, I would say we're still looking at the same profile, which is a lot of back-end services, just with what we do, because we ingest huge amounts of data. That's what we do. We ingest data and then we send it right back out to our customers. And our customers come in all shapes and sizes, but it's because it's about data. We're agnostic as far as programming goes, but there's still a lot of the back-end work. But to Amanda's point, UI becomes very important as well too.
Yes,
and so I would say,
realm.
yeah, the front end skills. We actually identified that as a gap at New Relic when we had a change in leadership. That hey, we're gonna shift some of these positions around and change them into a lead UI or a mid-level, front-end engineer. So we're seeing a lot more of that, but still kind of the same profile that we've always had, because our products haven't shifted that much. It's just about improving that user experience more than anything as we try to grow the business further.
Would you say that that's your experience as well, Robin?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit industry specific, right? The two industries I think are really growing right now are e-commerce and cybersecurity. So you're going to see a lot more in that area and then less in some other areas.
Makes a lot of sense to me. People are beefing up their cybersecurity now that we're all in Zoom fatigued out. But I'm glad everybody made it tonight. Tim, we did have a non-job related question for you. What episode of Leverage were you on?
Oh gosh. I was on more than one.
Okay.
True story. I was, just before I broke into recruiting, I was still in insurance, and while I was laid off trying to figure out what I wanted to do and how to transition and change careers in a down economy, I found out about this opportunity to be on Leverage. And I did one small episode where you can only see me walking down the hallway, season 2. But season 3, starting with, they call it 301, so season 3, episode 1, I was in that, and I'm all throughout it. And lots of great shots.
Oh, that's so exciting.
So that's probably the most prominent one. And there was another one that I don't know the number of it, but basically you can just think of me always being sort of a law enforcement type. I was a prison guard in season 3, and then later on I think it was an FBI agent arresting a guy who was a con man. So.
Oh, that's so fun. That's like in my wildest dreams. I would be an actor, but I don't know. I think I'd just start laughing. So much respect to you for being able to pull that off. And it's a very fun fact. I always have a hard time thinking about why am I a fun person? That is a good fun fact. I liked Amanda's as well. Hedgehog accessories business. Too good. Okay, so going into networking, how do you network right now? I think when we were warming up earlier today, I liked the topics. We were talking about coffee, asking for just 15, 30-minute coffee breaks. People seem to be a little bit more available. Who was that? Was that Amanda or Gigi? Who brought up the coffee break?
That was Gigi.
Gigi. If your internet's working, Gigi, that would be. You want to try it?
I was just finding that, yeah. COVID, one of the silver linings was it seemed you could make coffee dates where you didn't have to like drive somewhere, park somewhere, meet somebody, coffee dates that ended up taking about what felt like a half a day. And that people seemed to be available for 15 to 30-minute coffee dates. So that would be a great way to network. And, I find that one thing I wanted to say about network is we feel like it's all these things we want to get. But if you can think about networking as what could I give, how could I help other people, then it just puts you in a whole better frame of mind. And I find that those kind of networking coffee dates, I think, are easier to get now than they have been in the past.
Yeah, I think we were saying, especially in Portland, during like high traffic hours, it can triple your time to have a 30-minute coffee break. Just like get out of your house, get the coffee, chat with somebody, get to know them, and then by the time you get back, you just spent 2.5 hours. It can grow. Something that something that has helped me with scheduling these meetings has been to set up a Calendly account or any sort of online calendar system that you can hook up and have people schedule meetings with you. If you're interested in mentoring somebody else or networking with somebody else, you can say, hi, thank you so much for your time. I have these 30-minute blocks. What works best for you? So kind of trying to make it easier for them to open the door for you. And then the other way around, the reason I started using it was because someone who works at Google and used to work for SurveyMonkey on their design teams, she was able to give me an opportunity to mentor me because she just had this super easy Calendly link that she has an hour every Saturday, and people can just sign up with her. So definitely recommend just asking. You never know what's going to happen. Did anyone have anything to build on that topic before we move on?
Yeah, I was just I gave you a +1 there in the chat.
Okay.
I've used Calendly ever since I came over to New Relic, and I love it because scheduling and Amanda can attest this, and for anyone who is trying to schedule a meeting with a candidate, it can be challenging going back and forth through LinkedIn or email trying to find the right date. And the awesome thing about Calendly is you just send it out, and from day one working here, I put it out there for anybody that's wanted to have coffee. And I had a specific one for coffee, and I work in Big Pink, and I even had my specific coffee shops that I like, and I would just simply say, choose which one you want and we'll go there. So it's a
so fun.
Huge +1 on that. And what I did during COVID is I added a virtual coffee Calendly appointment. So, if I want to meet up with a former colleague or, networking, coffee with someone that maybe I haven't seen in a while, then I always use that as well too.
And I do have to ask, Big Pink, is that a Portland term? I am from McMinnville, so I'm still learning the city terms.
No worries.
Yeah, my wife says it's not pink, but it's the tall, whatever color building that's called the U.S. Bancorp Tower.
Okay, I probably would know it. The pink building on the skyline. Thank you, Lindsay. That's awesome. Big Pink. So you're lucky to work there. Every time I go to Portland, I take pictures like a tourist because it's just so pretty. Awesome. Thank you so much. So now we're starting to get into a lot of Gigi's territory, and a lot of what Robin's book is about. So we kind of already talked about how networking works, but how do you find those opportunities to reach out and ask somebody? Like, how do you get to the point where you start sharing Calendly links? Is it through LinkedIn? Do you ask a friend of a friend? What are some tips on getting connected?
So I can chime in there. Or Gigi, if you want to go while your internet's working, that's great too.
I'm just getting a notice that it's unstable, unfortunately. So I'm just going to keep talking.
You sound great to me.
Oh, good. Okay. So what I find is it's good to have some kind of common ground, and getting, I don't like to call people cold, where I have to start like totally at square one. So an introduction to that person is always, always the best way to go. And I'm trying to find, some reason they would also want to meet with me. Oh, we've got this common interest, or I'm, whatever it is, so that it's a warmed invitation for sure. Yeah, exactly. And think about what I could offer them. So I'm not just wanting something, because, that's not energy that attracts, So that's
Definitely
where I usually start when I'm trying to do that.
Thanks for sharing that space, Robin. That was very thoughtful of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give people a little bit of an idea about response rates on LinkedIn when you're reaching out for networking. So I was laid off in August of 2020, and I put 40 hours a week into my job search, just like I put 40 hours a week into my job. But about 80% of that time was spent on networking instead of on applying, which meant that in 4 weeks, I individually messaged 849 people and kept a spreadsheet of all of them, which is like a little much.
Wow.
The response rate on that was, I got 365 responses. Some of them were recommending other people for me to connect with. And out of that, I had 149 networking conversations over the space of 4 weeks. So that's about the type of response rate that you're going to get if you're reaching out cold. If you're reaching out not cold, you're probably going to get closer to 50 to 65% response rate. So Gigi's method is really going to be a good use of your time. And then once you exhaust that option is when you want to start reaching out cold.
That's great. From the recruiting side of things, is that if Robin is Robin maybe more of an average recruitee, job seeker, or do you kind of find it hard to get them networking?
I guess, wait, can you rephrase the question?
Yeah.
Are you asking if the the response rate is pretty accurate as like a job seeker?
As when you're working with people who are looking for jobs, are they typically applying at the same rate that Robin just explained, or do you have to kind of encourage people to apply more or less?
Oh
Do
yeah,
they keep their own
absolutely.
spreadsheets? Kind of some of those habits.
Yeah, so actually most of the people that I talk to on a, literally on a daily basis, I ask those questions. I'm like, where are you looking? What have you been doing so far? And they'll outline all of these things. I've got 5 versions of my resume and I doctor it each time, and I've got a spreadsheet of all the places I've applied. All of the things. So I feel like people are going above and beyond in terms of applying to jobs. But to Robin's point, the connection piece, like using your LinkedIn connections, your first and second connections kind of first, and then moving on and like seeking people out that are at companies you're interested in, tends to be a lot more effective than just blind applications. It's just, I think most people that I speak to end up finding something through a friend of a friend, unless I'm lucky enough to place them. But that just seems to be how it works, especially in Portland. It's totally different in like San Francisco. It's like you don't know anybody because it's so huge. But if you look at Portland is so small. I mean, it just in comparison to other like large technology hubs, that one, you kind of have to like keep a pretty solid, clean reputation because everybody kind of knows everybody through all of the different things. So I would say that, yes, I think people are applying at that rate. But again, to Robin's point, the people connections are much more effective than those cold applications.
I think as you start building your connections to, at least on LinkedIn, it just becomes a point of conversation to say, oh, Amanda, I saw you already knew Gigi. She's going to be on our panel. So it just becomes an easier way to start making those conversations that add to your relationship building. And then when someone's recommending you, it's more genuine because they're actually warm about you and they've actually had a good conversation. So I think, Gigi, maybe you could speak to kind of trying to avoid the cheesiness of icebreakers, but also setting the stage for getting like relationship building when you're networking. I see she's a little bit on freeze, so I'm hoping she can answer.
So, one of the other big things.
One of the other big things, we'll never know. I think she dropped off.
A little bit if you want.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I always recommend a guided conversation because I think networking can be a little nerve-wracking for people who don't do it professionally like recruiters do. And so I recommend that you just have 3 questions that you're prepared to ask everyone who you speak with. And they might vary a little bit, but one of the questions should always be, in theory, you're networking with people at companies you want to work at, right? And you're either networking with talent acquisition professionals or people who might be hiring managers there, or people who have the job title that you want. And so you want to ask them why they joined the company, what keeps them there, and what would cause them to leave. And then you want to ask them what's one thing they love about the culture at the company, and if they could change one thing at the company, what that would be. And then the last question you want to ask them is, what's one question they think you should be asking that you haven't asked yet because you don't know what you don't know?
You don't know what you don't know. Is that something that you've also recommended to your applicants, Tim?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'll say to someone that's interested in the company, well, I'll ask them first, well, do you know anyone else? Because I feel like I have a certain amount of knowledge, and I have my certain pitch that I can give to them and tell them how great I think the company is and the direction that we're headed.
Mm.
But I'll always ask them, because I'm not an engineer, do you know any of the engineers here? Or do you know any of the product managers or product designers? And I'll recommend that, hey, I would talk to them, pick their brain and take advantage of that relationship to find out what life is like as an engineer here.
Mhm.
Definitely, you want to find out what they like about working at the company, regardless of who it is that you're talking to, whether it's the hiring manager, the person in the position that you're in, or if you're talking to someone in talent acquisition, just like what Robin said. So, I think one of the big things about networking, which you have to do in Portland, by the way, you just have to, is to take away some of the pressure, is to not give yourself like a quota of, I need to talk to and meet 10 people or 15 people or whatever.
Mm.
Just take the stress off, because there are even some times where you can just kind of camp out and somebody may approach you, and just ease your way into it until you become comfortable going to these events. All the events are going to be different. And of course, I'm talking about your on-site, in-person types of events.
Mhm.
But you definitely want to have some prepared questions that'll help you ease into those conversations, just like what Robin said. So totally agree with that.
That's great.
I wanted to build on something Robin said. What I'm going to try to do now is just keep my video off and see if.
Yeah, you sound great and clear now.
Oh, good, good. Was what I loved about what Robin said is this whole idea of preparing questions. Because often we think when we show up, and especially the term elevator speech, we have to give our elevator speech, and there's that word speech in it, which makes you think of a podium and sort of just a one-way monologue. But to really show up with questions so that it becomes a conversation where you can really get to know somebody is just such a smart thing to do. And it's fun to think of questions, it's sort of, so that was just something that I just wanted to underline.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking at some of these questions here, making sure we get some of the juicier ones out. So how can you stand out if you are looking, let's talk about like the entry level. If you're not sure that you meet all the qualifications, you're already kind of nervous about applying, but you really feel like you have a chance. How can you stand out to try to get the interview without feeling super confident about having all the experience?
I could kind of speak to this, and I want to be transparent, like entry level and like breaking into technology isn't always like my strongest suit. But I think what I look at first and foremost is your resume. The first thing that I am going to see at any sort of impression of you is going to come from that one pager, generally, as an entry level person. If it is brightly colored and over designed, it might hurt or break my brain. But if it's just, a Word doc with text, that's also, not showing a lot of effort.
Right.
I'm a big believer in the middle way, just kind of generally in my life. Like you kind of want to stand out, but you also want to be your authentic self and just not go over the top or underperform. You want to present a professional version of yourself the best that you can, but also again not get like flashy or just like not care. So I think that's the first thing to think about is your resume and how that initial presentation goes. I wish there was a right or a wrong way to do a resume. You can go and talk to 6 or 7 resume coaches and they will all tell you something different. There are no consistencies. Keywords, beefing it up for, different positions, that's not necessarily going to guarantee that you're going to be picked from the pile to chat with. So think about, kind of a clean presentation. But again, kind of hearkening back, like when you're entry level and you're reaching out to connections, people that work for companies that you're interested in, and you're showing up and saying, hey, I'd really like to learn more about this. That's a better way to stand out, I think, than anything else. show your value and your worth in those conversations, but also just ask questions, like ask what people want to see. If you're talking to like an engineering manager, ask them like, what would you like to see on your team? Like what kind of personality assets are best, for your leadership style, things of that nature will stick in people's minds, but also help you learn a lot on how you should present to like specific types of engineers or managers and whatnot.
And I can chime in there a little bit too. Amanda is
Sure.
exactly right. Recruiters are not used to looking at design resumes. So if you're in UX, you want to submit that as an additional document, not as your application. That it just breaks our brain. It does. And she's also like, it's not possible to write a resume that 100% of people will enjoy or will think is excellent. That being said, if you're entry level and you've graduated with 350 other people who have all completed the exact same project as you, there's one thing that's different between you and all 350 other people, which is how you approach problem solving. And so you want to have two things as an entry level candidate. You want to have either a design portfolio or a GitHub account, depending on if you're in design or software engineering.
Nods all around, snaps.
Yeah. On your GitHub account, you not only want to have projects, but you want to be commenting on other people's projects. While recruiters don't know what that means at all, every single hiring manager is going to look at it because that's how they're going to determine who has passion. The thing that they want to understand after who has passion is who has logical thinking. And so once you land the conversation with them, they're going to ask you to explain your train of thought through each step of the work that they're able to see. And if you're not able to articulate that to them, then they're going to think that you're not able to convey information concisely in a way that is convincing and understandable. So you do want to kind of role play through that with friends, and you want to role play through it in different ways. The first time you role play, you want to role play as the hiring manager and figure out what questions they're going to ask you. And the second time you role play, you want to tell your role play partner what you're terrified of and have them act that out. And then you're going to be yourself in that role play. And that's going to really help you there.
That's great. Lots of snaps from Amanda and nods from Tim.
Robin's tip just reminded me of the Parks and Rec episode where Anne takes Leslie out on a date, like a practice date, and like puts all the bad scenarios in so that she's ready. Like seriously, Robin's right. Do that for an interview. Scare yourself a little bit because then it'll be so easy. Okay, sorry.
Over-prepared.
Yeah.
Any additional thoughts there, Tim?
Yeah, I would say someone told me once about resumes. It's kind of like the old newspaper rule that you have to capture the attention before the fold. So
before the fold, yeah.
Yeah, so there's some that would say that you have 10 seconds or 7 seconds or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Regardless, you have to figure out how to capture the attention. How are you going to hook me? And for me, it's not going to be your name, but you have to be able to tell a story. So do away with the objective, have some sort of a summary, and within that summary, that's where you can capture the attention as far as resumes go. Now, whether we should still have resumes or not, that's a whole different argument and conversation. But you always have to be thinking about how can I separate myself from the rest of the pack? Critical thinking, Robin mentioned that, problem solving, and even leadership within that big capstone project. Or if you're in a boot camp and you're on a smaller team, be able to talk about what you did as far as leading certain things. And just really bringing out the passion that you had. Passion is something that I look for all day long. I will even type it in and this, everyone's not going to know this, but when I do a Boolean search, which is basically a keyword string that I use, I will often put passion, because if someone is using the word passion or passionate or innovative or created, built, implemented, I'm looking for those action verbs that shows me that they took the time and energy to showcase their enthusiasm for their craft. And those are the people that I get excited about, where they can sort of in natural language talk about what excites them about what it is that they do or what it is that they want to do. And another thing as far as entry level, I say practice your craft, the GitHub piece. There are a lot of small businesses out there. You know, some of them don't have great sites. In COVID, maybe some of them.
I'd say a few, more than a few of them.
Would tell people that I met from a local boot camp, you know, look at your local donut shop or coffee shop or whatever, and you know, maybe do some but just something where you can practice, and that's just going to help you build up your portfolio so that you're going to be able to showcase that later on when you have those conversations with recruiters and hiring managers.
And along those lines, contributing to open source projects is a great way to accomplish that.
Yes. Great point. Yep.
And I think, I don't know if we're having one upcoming necessarily, but we do host hackathons where you can join, even if you're a beginner, if you're a project manager or a designer. There are lots of opportunities. So even if you're not super confident in your tech coding skills yet, you can still get involved. And I think we even might have a channel about contributing to open source on our Slack channel. If not, we should. So there's a lot of support in the open source community too for doing your first contribution. So that's great advice. There are a couple of additional questions that we've gotten from the chat that I want to make sure we touch on. So the best practices when connecting people with people on LinkedIn, specifically about when should you not invite to connect with them, and let's see, there's a slight cutoff. When should you not invite to connect with them, and when can you? Are there some like kind of unspoken rules about the follow versus a connect?
That again, it's so dependent, I think, on the person and how you're received. I think it's really important if you're going to connect with somebody cold to send them at least like, hey, I'd like to connect because of X, Y, and Z. Like, I'm interested in I'm a UX designer and I'm interested in your company because of blah, blah, blah. Don't just connect and like expect something to happen. Because again, it's not meaningful. It's not authentic. You're not standing out.
Goes back to the give.
But I think for the most part, I connect with pretty much everyone unless they're trying to like sell me something really strange, because you just never know. And I think, you know, being friendly is a big part of recruiting. You want to be approachable. You want to be a good ambassador for your clients and your own company. So it's definitely something that you should do, is like you definitely connect with people that you don't know, especially if you're interested in their company. But don't just do it for the sake of it.
Just try to like button mash on the connect button.
No button mashing. That's only good in Super Smash Brothers.
I do have a couple of guidelines that I follow from my own connecting on LinkedIn. Sure. And if I really don't know anybody at all, but I'm interested in what they're doing, I'll just follow them. And then as I see their things they're posting about, such a great way to start a very casual conversation is just to comment on what they posted on. Because if somebody just reaches out to me and I have no idea how we know each other, then I'm reluctant to accept a connection when I don't understand why they're reaching out to me. A couple times I've actually written back to people and said, I'm just wondering what it was about.
Like, how'd you find me?
You know,
why do you want me at your event?
So I think that's just good. Follow them if you really don't know them, and then just start commenting on what they're posting. If it's of interest, is a really nice way to very easily start with somebody.
Great. Thank you. Someone else had a question. Are there ever part-time opportunities in tech? I do seem to see a lot of full-time or a lot of contracts, so like full-time for 3 months kind of thing, but I don't so much see part-time opportunities. Is that something that you're familiar with in your work?
We
thought
don't
Tim
see
came off
it.
mute first. By slight second.
We don't see part-time at all, I want to say, at New Relic. Rarely we may have a contract role, very, very rarely. But yeah, not part-time. Though I would say due to COVID, work going to a part-time schedule has been offered at New Relic to employees just because of, this being a unique time period. But when we're posting for positions, in general, they're going to be full-time positions or starting as a contractor with a thought that you can convert at some point.
That kind of adds to one of the other questions here, asking about mid-level data jobs. What are kind of some of the baseline expectations you have for when you're placing those kinds of roles? Anyone familiar with that?
Mid-level data roles?
Mid-level data jobs. Yeah, where'd that one come from? If anyone wants to add on to that question, maybe
I would think
data
that's
analyst.
that's simply going to be years of experience, probably, wanting to know that they're going to have some experience already with, Tableau or SQL or Salesforce, something like that, as opposed to coming in fresh and maybe just knowing part of the Microsoft suite, and being new and having some educational knowledge, but no actual work experience or limited work experience, I guess.
Okay. Would you echo that, Amanda?
Sorry, I did not realize that I was.
I thought you were waiting to speak, so I wanted to make sure we didn't skip you.
No,
The audio tonight is just not working with us. Hopefully she gets back to us. I can look at one of the other questions we had in the parking lot. Just had an interview for a contract position where the company was requiring onboarding and training on site when cases are rising right now. This interviewee had to make a challenging decision on whether to move forward or not. Do any of the panelists have experience with companies handling the changing pandemic scenario? Is it a case of them not updating these position descriptions with the frequently changing mandates? Or is it the companies really want people to be on site? How have you handled that so far?
For us in New Relic, we have been doing online interviewing and hiring since mid to late March, whenever we made the call. I haven't been in the office since March. Well, I went back to pick up my keyboard. That's about it. But no, we've been in a virtual environment once they made the call and closed all of our offices. So that, for us, we just went to using our video conference tool for our interviewing, and then also for our onboarding as well too.
Okay, so you're set. You're not putting anyone in an uncomfortable position. But maybe in some other roles, for some reason, it's important that they get on-site training or something. Maybe, do you have anything to speak to on that?
I would think for certain industries that might be required. I mean, especially if you're talking about dealing with certain types of machinery or.
Right. Like this Intel like chip space or something.
Exactly. But if it's a role that's can be done 100% remote, then I would think most companies are not going to be doing on-site.
Requiring that insight. Okay.
Yeah, even if you're a contractor, because they can ship you your laptop if they give you one, and you can still onboard virtually.
Anything, Robin or Gigi, that you have to add on to that?
I would just say never be afraid to tell a company that you're not comfortable meeting with them in person in the middle of a pandemic. Um, and if they make you feel bad for that or aren't willing to find a way to accommodate you for at least the beginning of the interview process, then, I think that that's probably not a company you're going to have a great experience working for. That being said, if it is, say, for a hardware role where you do have to be in there physically touching things to fix them or get them working, or if you're like in field IT services or something like that,
Right.
they do want to meet you in person, maybe final rounds, let them know, once you're hired or once you make it to the final rounds, that it's not a problem for you, but you want to reduce your exposure as much as possible. But honestly, that safety part extends beyond the pandemic too. If you're ever interviewing with a company and you don't feel safe for any reason, end it, because you don't want to work there.
Mm.
One other
And did
thing
I
I can
see Gigi? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, one
Go
other
ahead.
thing I could say just about the interview process is one thing we need to remember about interviews is, and really any kind of presentation, is it's a physical thing you're doing. So like, for example, some people suffer from just getting very nervous before interviews. And one great thing you should do is that if you do a workout, or somebody who works out regularly, if you live in Portland, you probably do that because we all do, but do a really hard workout that morning, or take a really brisk walk, because being in your body will help dispel a lot of that nervous energy. And then when you show
Mhm.
up for the interview, one great thing to practice is sometimes our faces can look very grim when we get nervous. So I often say to practice a little Buddha smile or a Mona Lisa smile. It will actually make you feel
Mm.
better, and then you'll act more relaxed. And I do vocal warm-ups too before I do anything. And that just involves humming. So my voice
Mm.
is nice and warmed up before I get there. So I don't have like a croaky morning voice or
Not coming straight from lunch.
exactly, exactly. So just remember that doing an interview is, it's an Olympic event, and you need to be in your body.
I would add on to that. I know we're doing a lot of video interviewing right now
Mhm.
and a lot of Zoom meetings and so forth, but there's still phone interviews that take place. And one thing that I learned years ago was that in order to give your voice a better projection is to stand up and to have your resume laid out, and any points that you want to make sure that you get across, 3 5 points, have that right next to your resume. But as you're standing, and if you can even have a mirror in front of you, that will also help you with your smiling, so that you're making sure that you're coming
Mm.
across as comfortable and and enthusiastic, because you're able to
Yeah.
see if you're tensing up or if you're not smiling in that phone interview.
Yeah. And I'm checking my posture. I
Standing
can
is
see that as a bonus too.
standing is a great thing to do, even if you're on video. I have a box I put my laptop on when I'm standing to do a presentation, and it does give you way more energy. The only thing you need to watch with standing when you're in video is just to make sure that your weight is evenly distributed on both feet, so that you're not sort of rocking back and forth during the interview if you're on video. But standing that's Tim, that's a really great suggestion for both phone and video as well.
It's great. Um, that one turned into a big old conversation. Sometimes it's the smallest questions that turn into a good conversation. So thank you everybody for sending in your questions on the chat. I do want to make sure we have time to get to Robin's giveaway on her new book, and then also to give you all time to discuss in breakout rooms and have just share some notes and get more targeted time with our panelists here. So the rest of the groups, we kind of put the questions we got and the ones we had into some groups. Looks like we have a lot left about the interview process. So we're doing a whole series on this. This is our first of a career planning series. This first one was just kind of getting the job, getting in the door. The next one we want to do is really honing in on that interview process. So we'll save our questions that are related to that and touch on those then. For now, I kind of want to just grab like one more from the entry level section and maybe touch on these certifications, and then we can go ahead and do Robin's giveaway there. So let's see. Someone's had a long career with coding experience, but is finding it challenging to transition into data engineering. What are the best steps they can take to get there? Wonder if Amanda could speak to that one. By the way, she did have internet went out, so that's just been a theme tonight. Go ahead, Tim.
I'll start. I would say if it's a career transition, the best way to get into whatever that is through informational interviewing, plain and simple. Just you can't buy somebody coffee. Well, you could, I guess, virtually, but you know, just sitting with someone who's in data engineering and just say, hey, I know your time is busy potentially, and I don't want to take up too much of it, but I would just love to learn more about what you do. I'm very interested in this career. This is what I'm doing currently, and I'm just trying to learn more about it so that I can set myself up to be appealing to potential hiring managers when they see my resume, and just going through that process. That's exactly what I did when I was looking to move out of insurance and into recruiting. I just had a lot of coffee dates with recruiters and just said, tell me what you do. Tell me what the difference is between agency recruiting and in-house recruiting, and just learned a lot about it. Didn't learn everything, but still learned enough to where when I did have interviews, I felt comfortable talking about the recruiting career and why I was interested in making that move.
It feels more authentic than maybe something that you can read online, because you've had an actual conversation with someone versus just reading a blog that says that these are the ins and outs of recruiting, and you kind of feel more like you're reading a script. It'll feel more natural. That totally makes sense.
Yep.
If anyone has anything to add on to that, go ahead while I look at this next question. Okay, so I can go ahead and ask, is it worth it to find an adult internship? So I suppose that is assuming that most internships are when you're late teens, early 20s. Then as you kind of look for your next step or maybe a career change, is it worth it to find an adult internship?
I think actually what
She's
Tim
back.
Suggesting earlier about looking into, oh gosh, I hope it was Tim. It might have been Robin. Now my brain is not processing, but looking into like your local companies, like local shops that may not have a great website or, you know, look like some technical help. That might be I think the nice part about that is you could do autonomous work. If you're looking for like a team setting, I think internships are super helpful. But I think internships are generally available to students or recent graduates. So if you just finished a program, you're very likely to get more, you know, accepted into an internship. I think at any point in your career or life, if you are willing to do free work for a company to learn, most companies are pretty open to that. So I certainly think that it's worth looking into. I'm a big believer of lifelong learning. My learning doesn't necessarily mean it's always career-based learning. I do a lot of sewing and such.
Hedgehogs, accessories, the like.
High beds. But I mean, I think that's a really good way to hone your skills, is to immerse yourself in a team environment. And, you know, the stakes are a little bit lower when you're, well, they're a lot bit lower when you're an intern versus like a paid employee.
Is that kind of what you were going to say, Tim? You're just thinking on something to offer.
No, yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at before. Because when I think of boot camps, a lot of it is career changers that are going through those programs. But there are some situations and scenarios where I know someone that went through the Scrum Master program, and they did it. They did an internship here locally with Toad before they ultimately got a full-time gig. So it can happen, but you know, if you can do some pro bono work, or you know, just volunteering, I think you may be able to find those opportunities a lot faster and easier than if you're trying to compete against the recent grad or the current four-year student.
Sure. Yeah, expedite yourself.
Exactly.
That kind of relates, both of your points relates to one of the last questions I want to get to. How many vendor certifications are important for finding a job? Can you find jobs without certifications? And yeah, how if someone got a Scrum training, how is that valuable compared to someone who can just naturally speak to it, but might not necessarily have the certification behind it?
I work with a lot more developers than I think project managers. So I think at least when I have worked on project managers, a lot of folks do ask for some sort of CSM, some sort of Scrum certification, agile things, or also like a PMP I've seen pretty frequently. In terms of like a, UI, UX coders of any sort, I haven't noticed any certifications that mean too much. Other than your boot camp courses, college courses, all of that stuff. Training and development is relevant and should be on a resume, but I can't think of any certifications that are super meaningful. However, if you're like a network engineer or DevOps, things that are require a little bit more in terms of hardware, I've seen certifications helpful in that regard. I hope that was helpful. I hope that answers.
Yeah, I think I've seen trainings on like Amazon Web Services or like Google Cloud Platform. I've seen like free training, so it kind of makes it feel like it's gimmicky, but I've also seen people that find those courses really valuable. So Tim, I saw you nodding, I think. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, I don't know that it makes a difference for an engineering manager, but if someone says that they're AWS certified or they have been certified for 5 years, but they have the work experience to go with it, I think the manager, the leader is going to be looking more at that actual production work. It's always coming back to, but have you done it in production? I see the sandbox over here, but what have you done in production? So that's where it gets challenging. But Robin talked about cybersecurity, the CISSP or the CISA certs. Those are going to be big for people who are in that, and they know that, they get that. They may start off as a network administrator engineer and get a CCNA, and then they decide they want to go the security route, and so they start down the path of getting those additional cyber certs. Desktop support, so more IT type careers.
Yeah.
I still see where certs matter. There are, I can think of, not to call out BPA, but I used to recruit for BPA in the agency world, and they were absolutely in love with the PMP. They wanted their project managers to have a PMP. They eased
that broad
up
overview.
Yeah, they eased up on it a little bit, but again, a lot of it was contract work. And so in their mind, because we're hiring someone that we're not going to have time to train, we know that if they've gone through this course of training, that they're probably
there's at least a baseline.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, those were the really important questions I wanted to make sure we got to. All right, so Robin, it's your time to shine. Do you want to talk about your new book? You can have about 10 minutes for that, and then we'll do some quick breakout rooms.
Absolutely. And I tend to be pretty concise, so it won't take 10 minutes unless people have questions, which we can definitely address too. But I recently came out with a book called Rise, a feasible guide for job hunters in COVID times and beyond. And this book came about because I've had 25 jobs in 20 years, and I've gone through 3 career transitions in that time. So I've used the same methodology to get through all of that until I found a place that I didn't hate working at. So I'll be really honest, talking about passion earlier, I feel my passion in like volunteering for animal shelters and like volunteer work and things like that. I'm in tech for the money, to be totally honest. It's why I chose my industry and it's why I chose my field. And that's the passion.
Well, in a sense, that lets you do more of your passion, right? So it's however you feel it.
Having a nice bank account. And, you know, as a single mom, I need to have that padding. You never know what the future holds. You never apparently know when a pandemic is going to arise. And so this book talks a lot about what we've talked about here today, a lot about the networking aspect of getting a job. I think a lot of what job seekers don't have insight into right now is what recruiters are going through during the pandemic. So when I was working at Acquia, which is an open source company, I worked there when the pandemic first hit. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the US kind of closed down in March. And prior to March, Acquia received around 14,000 applications per quarter across all roles and functions in the US. And in the first 3 weeks after the pandemic hit, they received 30,000 resumes. And they had a team of 4 recruiters. There's no way that 4 human beings can go through 30,000 resumes. And so when that happens, recruiters tend to go to the place where they get the best return on investment for their time. And that is employee referrals. And that is why your best bet is going to be to network your way in. And that's why I strongly recommend that you spend 80% of your time networking as opposed to 80% of your time applying. Even though it's hard and it's terrifying, and I do it professionally and I'm still terrified through every conversation. Don't do it. Don't skip it just because you're scared. The other person is scared too, but they're going to do it with you. And so this book will help you give you a lot of strategies and techniques about that, but it'll also give you worksheets to really determine your true value and be able to form that into an elevator pitch that you can use to market discreetly to people and appropriately to people during those networking conversations. And then it'll teach you how to use your resume as a marketing document to instead of just going through points in a job description, to really create conversations that both the applicant and the interviewer want to talk about and are excited to talk about. And then it'll walk you through the end portions at the negotiation process. And it'll also give you, I think what some job search books miss out on, and before I was a recruiter, I looked for this all over the place and I had a really hard time finding it, was what are the recruiter strategies? What are recruiters doing to find candidates? What am I not having on there that's making it so I'm not getting the responses? So the end of the book walks you through all of the recruiter strategies so that you understand it from both the job seeker side and the recruiter side. And it also walks you through things like what to do if you're asked an illegal interview question, and how to handle unprepared interviewers, which nobody who's here on this panel is, I'm sure, since they're on this panel, but I think we've all been in an interview situation where the interviewer is reading your resume right in front of you because they didn't read it before they met you, or they walk in and call you the wrong name, which is like the worst case scenario because you're their 7th interview that day. And so it teaches you how to take back the power in those conversations so that those interviewers leave with all of the information that they need to have in order for you to convince the company that you're going to make the company more money than it would cost them to recruit, hire, and retain somebody else for the role. That's always the end goal, because I love nonprofits like Women Who Code, but most of us are applying to for-profit organizations. And for-profit organizations are all about revenue. So you want to be able to prove either bottom line savings or top line value add. And so it'll really walk you through the steps of how to get there, and even provide you with some like adult Mad Libs for you to plug and play to get started for inspiration. And so when we first talked about this, Kaylin, we were going to kind of give away one book and select a winner for it. But I am trying to do a random act of kindness every day. And so I asked Kaylin if today my random act of kindness could be to offer the book to all of you, an advanced copy of it for free. And so what I will do is put my email address in the chat box right now. And you don't even need to type anything in the message body. You can just put WWC Portland in the subject line when you email me, and I will respond. I'm East Coast, so it's very late. So I will reply to you tomorrow with a PDF version of the book.
Thank you so much, Robin. Excuse me. Yeah, that was an instant, yeah, thank you. There was no question. I just think that everything I've heard about your book so far from you, and where I've seen it around LinkedIn and whatnot, it just seems like such a direct, instant value add to anyone looking for a job. So,
But I also have to really thank Women Who Code. One thing that I didn't tell you, Kaylin, I told you that I did a talk at Women Who Code Boston. But what I didn't tell you was that on the chapter about creating your value proposition, that was my test run of that chapter at the
really?
Boston event. So I took all of the
awesome
questions from that event and used it to really elevate that portion of the book.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to do Amanda's snaps. That was super exciting. I like that you saved that nugget for just now. That was super cool. Maybe this will be a book from one of the panelists here, the next book, all the questions that we got here today, answering those questions. So I think we're ready for breakout rooms now. They have changed a bit since I was originally looking at them, so it might take me a second to sort people. Let's see. I can do, need to make sure that each of the panelists here are at least in a room. Okay. So it says that you should all be assigned, or the rooms are open. So go ahead and pick one. I'll make sure that they're fairly even. If you have any troubles, go ahead and send me a message in the chat, or you can come off mute. Amanda is in room 1, Katarina and Gigi are in room 2, Tim is in room 3, and then Robin is in room 4 there. Let's see. I can go ahead and start assigning people as well, if that would be helpful. I see your comment, Nikki. I'm coming. There we go. It's a little bit different from the last time I did breakout room. Sorry, y'all. Thanks for hanging in with me. Trying to click as fast as I can. That's what I get for not getting much sleep last night. I'm gonna sack out tonight. Hope you enjoy. Oh, I was talking to myself on mute. Welcome back, everybody. It's funny, I wasn't seeing any of your faces because I was sharing my screen, and then now I'm seeing everybody's faces, and it's so fun. Hello, hello. Let's see. Oh, I guess we had the 30-second countdown. That's good. I thought I did something wrong with the breakout rooms that people wouldn't get the countdown anymore, but that's good. Kelsey, I didn't hear a question from you. No pressure, but was there anything you wanted to ask?
No, I had asked, I sent in that question about like when you can connect with people on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, okay.
I always find,
was that helpful?
Yeah, that was super helpful because I just feel weird about like connecting with someone I've only met like once in person or something.
Yeah, and they're gonna think I'm weird just reaching out. And I've like followed people and then they've connected with me. And I was like, did I do that wrong? I don't know. I think it's kind of just being willing to feel a little bit silly and just experiment. I think the following, like Gigi said, and then being able to like connect with a question, like, hey, I saw you posted this thing. What's your history with biotech or something? I'm glad that was helpful for you. Okay, so as we're all joining back in, I want to thank everyone again so much for joining. This was scary for me a little bit. I've never moderated a whole event, so I hope I did all right. I couldn't have done it without my Women Who Code. Thank you, Women Who Code co-hosts. Thank you so much for being here. And then, of course, our panelists, and then Robin, our bonus panelist. And thank you so much for being so gracious with your book giveaway. Yes, we are Women Who Code Portland. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is the first of many career planning series events. So I think the next event we're looking to plan is about nailing the tech interview. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye on our meetup page. If you're not already a part of the Slack group, go ahead and join us there. And you all have a great rest of your night. Thanks for
Good night,
coming.
everybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.